It has been a head-spinning month of elections and petitions, tallying and snarling, and boy, did it even go musical in the Supreme Court at some point. And what a day it was at the Houses of Parliament as Kenya Kwanza and Azimio la Umoja, the two evenly abled political coalitions, sweated it out for the control of the Houses. It wasn't that messy or noisy, but Masika Moses Wetangula carried the day, as did Amason Kingi, the two who respectively became the next Speaker of the National Assembly and Speaker of the Senate. The News Gang is here on a sad night around the world as the Queen of England, Her Majesty Elizabeth II, dies at the age of 96. So, with that said, let's get into the show now. I want us to start with where we left off just before the break. It's now done and dusted. Deputy Speaker of both the National Assembly and the Senate are known. Let's talk about the National Assembly and how they voted. Can we start with the Senate, though? And how they voted. What was that? There was also a little bit of drama with some of them walking out. But it was interesting in the manner in which they voted. It's not always across party lines, is it?
Absolutely. And look at the numbers. First, it is important to tell our viewers, how many senators do we have? We have 47 elected senators from 47 counties. And then we have 20 nominated senators. 18 of them are women and 2 are male, 2 nominated male. How? Because 16 of the nominated senators are positions directly meant for women. This is part of the affirmative action. And then 2 positions for persons with disability, a male and a female, and then for youth, a male and a female. So makes it 20 nomination slots plus 47 makes it 67. However, remember, Bungoma Senator-elect Moses Wetangula resigned to go and vie for the Speaker's job in the National Assembly. So in total, we had 66 senators, 46 elected and 20 nominated. And so when you look at initially at the numbers were showing that it was 23-24, 24 for Kenya Kwanza Coalition and 23 for Azimio. That was before the crossover of the UDM leader and Mandera Senator Ali Roba. So that tinkered with the numbers. They became 25-22. So with the resignation of Moses Wetangula, it was 24-22. Last evening, the nominated senators were gazetted. And out of the 20 nomination slots, the Kenya Kwanza, the UDA team got, the UDA as a party got 10 of the seats. And so you add on to the others that were given to the Kenya Kwanza affiliate parties, you could clearly see the numbers were not working for the Azimio la Umoja. And so I would think the walkout was strategic to avoid, a defeat on the floor of the House. The withdrawal of Kalonzo Musyoka, the Wiper leader, in my opinion, was also strategic to avoid that what would have been a loss. You see, a withdrawal and a defeat at the ballot may look the same thing, but politically you can argue they are different things because he didn't compete against Amason Kingi. But be it as it may, it was a long shot to expect that the Wiper leader would defeat the Kenya Kwanza-backed candidate, that is Amason Kingi, in that race. The same thing has happened in the National Assembly. I mean, you could see clearly that the numbers were in favor of the Kenya Kwanza team, because after yesterday's gazettement of the nomination slot, you could tell that the numbers were not very good for the Azimio team. And so what you saw was not a surprise. It was well calculated. And I think you can take it one step back. As soon as the election was conducted and the numbers were known, you saw a flurry of activities in Karen when the Deputy President or President-elect was wooing members of Parliament from Azimio allied parties and other small parties, as well as the 12 who were elected as independents. And so by the time they got to the House, the numbers were already clear.
I want us to also get some further understanding on something else that took place. If we can start to prepare the soundbite from, I'd like us to go to, I think we have, we can talk about what happened in the National Assembly with TJ Kajwang. So let's prepare that. I hope we have that. On the issue of Moses Wetangula and whether he was indeed eligible to run. And then, Linus, we can get into that because I remember you said this, yeah, but let's listen to TJ Kajwang on the eligibility of Moses Wetangula to run for Speaker.
So if, as I am reliably informed, that he tendered his resignation to an office without the substantive member being, the substantive holder of that office being validly in that office, then he resigned to no speaker.
The Honorable Moses Wetangula indeed resigned 2 days after the gazettement of senators by IEBC in the Kenya Gazette.
Even if Moses Masika Wetangula did not resign and did not brought you a resignation letter, based on Article 74 of the Constitution, the Honorable Moses Wetangula is not a senator of the 13th Senate, of the 3rd Senate, because he has not taken the oath of office.
You took an oath just a few minutes ago to protect this Constitution. There is a problem in the Constitution. We need to fix it. But as it is today, there is gray area.
Is that the seat automatically becomes vacant upon receipt of the resignation of a letter, and there is no corresponding obligation imposed on the Speaker to accept or decline the resignation. I have satisfied myself that the Honorable Moses Masika Wetangula is qualified for election as a Speaker of the National Assembly. The House is accordingly guided.
So, of course, this issue was finally resolved, Linus, but then there was the issue about whether when Moses Wetangula was resigning as senator, whether there was indeed a Speaker of the Senate who himself, we know, had resigned to go and seek, a governorship seat, which he won. But, does it matter whether there's a holder in the office?
I think the acting clerk of the National Assembly guided correctly that the resignation of Moses Masika Wetangula was in order because he resigned. He wrote his letter and addressed it to the Speaker. The argument that the Speaker is not sitting, you don't have a Speaker, you resign to an office, the office of the Speaker. And once that letter landed there, it was processed by, among others, the clerk of the, or the acting clerk of the National Assembly. To me, how I interpreted the events this afternoon at the National Assembly, this was a mini version of what Americans call filibuster, which is just do something to delay the proceedings. Hold it back as much as you can. Because really it was on very, very shaky grounds. And TJ Kajwang knew it. They knew that this is really difficult because this was not really a substantive motion to say that, look, Wetangula is not fit to run for office. But look at the entire day and how it played out. And what you see here is power attracts power. Azimio la Umoja became disadvantaged in this race for a parliament that the numbers are almost even the moment William Ruto was confirmed, or William Ruto's win as president-elect was affirmed on Monday by the Supreme Court. Because you need to follow simple things. For example, it's a Kenyan thing. First of all, even the defections that you've seen, independent members of parliament trooping to Karen because they're following power. There's one that actually said, we are going to where the certificate is. Yeah, because we are still there. We are still there. And you know what? We're going to see a little bit more. I think we're going to see the depletion, continued depletion of the Azimio la Umoja for two things. One, the active engagement by Kenya Kwanza, the active campaign to basically get whoever wants to join that side, do it. I mean, you can see, was it this week that we had the KUP, that those were the last two Azimio MPs to win their seats, also trooping to Karen. A lot of that will continue happening. But also the internal post-election effects of losing the election is also eating into the Azimio la Umoja. It's looking less organized by far compared to Kenya Kwanza. There was a pre-parliament meeting yesterday at the Masai Lodge. And how do you end up with a candidate then that withdraws from the race?
At the very last minute.
At the very last minute. It just says you don't have a plan. And you know, if you don't plan to the end and then coming this way, then this is the you fail. Yeah. So what we are seeing is lack of a plan on the part of Azimio la Umoja. They didn't have a clear path on this game for the control of parliament. They don't have a plan. Number two, they sort of gave up early, and you can see it even in the races for National Assembly, where Marende then says, you know, the second round is untenable. You've seen Farah Maalim there saying it's untenable. And it should be predictable. This is a parliamentary process. You lobby, you would know by the afternoon before you go into this election how well you are doing and how well or how you are performing, whether it's tenable or untenable. So those two things, there is a very, very active and aggressive move by Kenya Kwanza to show up its numbers and weaken Azimio la Umoja. But there's also the internal structures of Azimio la Umoja which are not delivering coherence and delivering strength.
We also saw that at the Senate?
Just absolutely. Yeah. And look at the numbers, especially in the Senate. 46 senators voted for Amason Kingi. Yeah. By the way, the two-thirds majority in the Senate is 45. 45. Yeah. So 46 voted for Amason Kingi. So if...
I want you to just hold that thought before you get there, because there was a walkout that then caused those 46, the ones who are left in the Senate. Let's listen to Senators Kajwang and Sifuna apparently leading a walkout, and then Francis will come back and explain how we then ended up with 46 votes for Amason Kingi.
Nominated senators were gazetted only yesterday in the evening and expected to come to the Senate today to elect a speaker and a deputy speaker. Nominated senators are eligible to run as deputy speakers. And the late gazettement of nominated speakers by the IEBC points to a pattern of ensuring that these 20, who largely represent women, youth, and persons with disability, are denied their right to participate in the elections in the House today.
So we will have no part of it. We know that to be a speaker who commands the respect of all the senators, you at least have to achieve the threshold of 2/3 of the members. That is what the standing orders and the Constitution require. So he is going to be a minority speaker, so to speak, because he will not get the number of senators that is set in order to command the sort of respect that a Speaker of a House as honorable as this should command.
But we have to get the process right, because the outcome of a process is as important as the process.
The argument didn't, in my opinion, really sound any convincing, because the process of electing a speaker and a deputy speaker is well outlined. We've done stories the whole of this week on how a speaker is elected, how a deputy speaker is elected. And there was a period where those who are interested in the position were given time to go and pick the nomination papers, fill them, and return them. Yeah. So I would think this was an afterthought in the question of whether nominated senators should have participated or not. But be it as it may, the reality, I think, dawned that the numbers were not looking right. And so that, in my opinion, informed the walkout. And if it was a coalition decision, then why did not less than 10 senators who ought to have walked out with the Azimio team go together? I mean, this is also a regional issue. Here is a candidate who was vying for the speaker's position from the Coast region. Do you know all the senators from the Coast region voted for Amason Kingi?
Including Stuart Madzayo.
Yeah, including Stuart Madzayo, who is from Kilifi,
yep.
Jones Mwaruma from Taita Taveta, Mohamed Faki from Mombasa, the senator for Lamu voted for Kingi, Juma Boy from Kwale voted for Kingi, James Lomenen from Turkana voted for Kingi, Fatma Dulo from Isiolo voted for Kingi, Margaret Kamar nominated voted for Kingi, Okia Omtata voted for Kingi. So that's where the 46 number comes from. And so the argument that the elected speaker or the substantive speaker in the Senate now got into office with a minority is not actually true, because 46 of those who are in the House voted for him. So he's substantively in the office, and the numbers are right that way.
Yeah, and, you know, for the election of these, you know, positions of leadership in the House, as we're seeing, and we're learning from, you know, history of covering these, they don't always go by party lines. I mean, you know, there's a lot that happens, you know, here. There's friendships, there's people who are probably friends on one side of the political divide 10, 15 years ago in previous houses, and now just happen to find themselves on opposite sides. You know, there's people who are friends and who've been there for a long time, Linus.
We are carrying it on from where we left it last time, before the election, basically. And, you know, parties don't mean much. We need to say that again, because in normal democracies, and UK has just had a transition as well this week, they have a new Prime Minister, Liz Truss, who was elected by 160,000 party members of the Conservative Party. Britain is a pure party system. We pretend or aspire to be a party system as well. But when you look at our voting patterns, they don't really follow the party line. First, because the party structures are very, very weak. Party identities are also is also a big issue, because what is really the identity of the parties that we have currently? Our politics is personality based, and that is why, from the presidential election to the way we are electing the speaker, it's more about who is that, where does he come from, which community. You're not talking about what is the policy of that party. Does it align with what you believe as a person or what you believe as an elected leader? And those are the things that are determining the direction of politics in this country. I mean, look at this as the Mio fallout, huge fallout, where just after election day, you have members of parliament who are elected in the coalitions, under the coalition's banner, then defect and say, you know, no, we have shifted to this other side. There's now the argument about the 3 months period that has to lapse according to the coalition agreement. But does anybody care? I don't think so. People, politicians in Kenya want to leave when they have to leave, and want to stay when they have to stay.
The next big contest in the two houses, and you will see it, particularly in the National Assembly, will be about which side is the majority, which side is the minority.
I heard John Buddy saying today that according to the registrar of political parties, is that it? That Azimio is, but, well, it's one thing with what's lodged at the registrar of political parties, but reality on the ground, what plays out on the floor of the House is different.
Absolutely, and on paper, if you're to follow the legal timelines and the legal consequences.
Amason Kingi on paper is still, you know, in
even
the Azimio coalition.
Right, even UDM.
Yes.
And if you're to count those MPs as belonging to the Azimio team, then maybe on paper you would argue that way. But what is the reality? What is the political reality? The political reality is that they have shifted allegiance. And so on matters voting, the classic example is what has happened a short while ago. I mean, in the National Assembly, for the Speaker's race, Moses Wetangula got 215 votes against 130 for Kenneth Marende. In the Senate, Kingi got 46 votes. Just the concluded election of the Deputy Speaker, Farah Maalim got 139 votes, while Gladys Boss got 198, and 1 vote was spoiled. So you can already tell where the numbers are. So now the next argument will be which side is the majority and which side is the minority. Look, the two speakers belong to the Kenya Kwanza team. And they will be, if that matter comes up, they will be expected to make a communication.
Yeah.
You can as well guess where the communication will land or how the communication will be, because those are the political realities. On paper, one may have an arguable case, but practically, politically, in reality, it sounds very different.
On a lighter note, there was one spoiled vote for the Deputy Speaker's race, and
yes.
I think I heard another one for the Speaker's race.
That one was contested, but eventually it was given to Wetangula.
Well, I mean, just goes to show, look, in Parliament, there's rejected votes. Remember at the LSK elections for, their leadership, there were also rejected votes. That just was just really
And during the presidential election, there were 113, 114.
Exactly. I mean, so it shows you that voting is not easy. Even in this race, which is surely much simpler than, what we do at the national election, where you've got 6 ballot papers, and in some cases you had 12 or 13 contestants for a particular seat. Anyway, I found that interesting. I mean, Linus, I just wanted to add on to, what you were saying about party lines being very blurry in the country. But isn't there an element to which, also on the floor of the House, like Omtata, who was saying he will vote based on principle, that these are people who are friends, and because of, maybe to your point again, the way, party lines are very fluid, and, one day it is this party and another day it is the next, that these are people who, especially the long-term serving, MPs, are friends. Some of them have known each other for a while. Some of them have worked in previous cadres of government. Maybe they've been in cabinet together, been in the executive and that sort of thing. And those are just some of the interesting things. I think like one of the interesting ones that popped up was the fact of even having siblings in the National Assembly. So Tim Wanyonyi is the Member of Parliament for Westlands. His brother, Moses Masika Wetangula, is in Kenya Kwanza Alliance.
And the Speaker.
And now the Speaker,
actually.
yes. And there was that beautiful shot of, Tim Wanyonyi watching his brother walk down, now being robed after being announced. But just listen to what Tim Wanyonyi had to say on how he would be voting.
Pia siwezi nikadiscuss kwa sababu hii kura pia ni asiri. Siwezi sema nitapikia nani. Na ni ndugu yangu, lakini unajua tuko mirengo tofauti, hatuwezi jua vile mambo yataenda.
Well,
yes.
He wasn't particularly categorical that I am in Azimio and so I will be voting for Marende. But blood is thicker, they say.
Well, and that is the interesting space some of these sibling politicians find themselves in. I remember there was a time when Martin Shikuku, who was a very, very popular member of parliament, was in the same house as his brother Luali Oyondi, a blood brother completely. Raila Odinga with Oburu Odinga, and different sets of brothers that end up in the house. But going back to the party issue, there's something this election has really shown. First, it has actually demonstrated that there is a quiet realization that because of the 50+1 rule and the competition for control of the House, we can't really have more than 2 big political formations. There is the Kenya Kwanza side and there is the Azimio side. When you look at the numbers, and Francis, you can actually take us through that as per the Registrar of Political Parties, the strength is almost even. And that is something we can note and almost say it's a welcome development, but we are one step away still. Can these coalitions actually be one party? It's something that can be said of the Kenya Kwanza Alliance. The Kenya Kwanza Alliance, the core of it, 100 and
in the National Assembly?
National Assembly alone?
144.
144 elected members are actually UDA, the United Democratic Alliance, meaning there is a core party that is the main thing around that coalition. When you look at the Azimio side, you have 88 ODM, you have 26 Jubilee, you have 27 Wiper. the Azimio coalition is too diverse. There are too many parties, very different, and moving in different directions compared to the Kenya Kwanza side. Now, though in terms of democratic practice and multi-party elections, we actually share the same, almost the same calendar with Ghana. They have, I was looking at their elections, and the trend is very similar to what we are seeing now in Kenya, where even the presidential vote is decided by a very small majority. This time, only 233,000 votes separated the winner from the runners-up. In Ghana, the race is usually similar. And when you look at Ghana's parliament, right now, out of the 2020 election, there are 137 members of parliament for NPP, and that's the New Patriotic Party, and 137, you know, basically 50-50 in terms of an equal share. But at least there is the courage there to move towards a two-party system, which is what is missing here. What is missing here is there is too much diversity, and in the process there is no identity. And that is why, like we said here last time, this country has been run by different political parties, governing political parties, since 2002, each running for 5 years. For example, now Jubilee has run its course. Yeah. Now we have Kenya Kwanza, but strictly speaking, really it's UDA, because it has 139 elected and 5 elected. This is more than a third of the House as a single a single party. Yeah. So we are making baby steps. I don't know whether it's 2 going forward and
1 back.
1 back. When it comes to comparisons between ourselves as Kenya and Ghana, which has had multi-party elections at the same time with Kenya since 1992. So the party space is not encouraging. We are continuing where we left it last time. It's going to be chaotic. It's going to be unprincipled. You wouldn't know which MP really belongs to where in terms of thought. And do we say where the safety belts and watch what the next few weeks look like in Parliament?
Yeah, and speaking of what the next few weeks look like, maybe not in Parliament, but, you know, we'd mentioned this before. Where does this leave Kalonzo now, Francis, with the withdrawal from the race? I mean, you know, what's next for him?
It's a very important question to ask, because the safety net probably would have been a speaker's position if he was to clinch it. But you see, it was a gamble in the sense that if he was to participate in this election and lose, it would have sounded a little awkward for him politically. Maybe one would argue that he still has some course to run. Age is still on his side if he was to really vie for the presidency. In the National Assembly, he still has about 24 members of the National Assembly. 26 or thereabout, and about 4 senators still. But look at it this way. The Speaker's position was being dangled even before we went to the ballot. At least word out there is that the Kenya Kwanza team was still hunting for him way before the election, and the promise was was one of the Speaker's position, the same position that he has ended up seeking. You remember he had placed papers for both speakers in the 2 chambers in the National Assembly and in the Senate before the PG yesterday settled on his vying for the Speaker's job. But he will be an interesting person to watch. Remember, and this is the difficulty of a party leader who has to manage troops who are inside Parliament while you are outside Parliament. Right. You'd look at it as a political misnomer, because you're a leader who is expected to manage numbers that are in the House while you are outside the House, remotely.
But we've seen that before, though.
But it is a difficult affair, remember?
2013, yeah.
Remember, these are members of Parliament who have particular interests to deal with. Their constituents have expectations. And some of these expectations involve quite some intense lobbying. And we all know how the national cake is shared out. Other than the whole question of CDF, which is still being contested in terms of its constitutionality, remember there are also quite a number of things to deal with, roads, water, and everything else. Much as there will be promises by the government of the day that there will be equitable sharing of the national cake, we all know that kwa ground vitu huwa tofauti kidogo. You have to, knock doors in government offices and lobby. Yeah. It puts you in an awkward position if, for example, you are a thoroughbred opposition, because we have this antagonistic nature of our politics where we have who are in government and who are in opposition. Yeah. You've already even had members of parliament in the two chambers of parliament talking about sisi tuko kwa serikali, nyinyi hamko kwa serikali. You already get that kind of a dichotomy. And so it will be interesting to see what he decides and whether I'm sure that probably there will be attempts to woo him in one way or another, whether he will succumb to those pressures. And the depletion of Azimio currently would tell you a story of where the numbers are likely to end up, especially cognizant of the fact that there would be a lot of government goodies to dangle to attract as many parliamentarians as possible. But what does this do to us as a society, us as a country? It means we'll end up with a parliament that is one way, more like we had another parliament in the 12th parliament that was largely one way when Jubilee was in power. Yeah, and now that we're talking about, what the composition of the House looks like and who's leading the troops and from where, Linus, what stands out for you in the composition of both houses? There's some new faces, there's some comeback kids, there's people like, Sirma, who was last in the House 10 years ago?
10 years ago. Was there the electronic voting? And, Parliament suddenly looks very different from when Sirma was there.
Yes,
and Sunkuli as well. Yeah. And then you have suddenly a house with these people, together with Toto, together with Salasia, together with Mbadi, together with Aden Duale, like seasoned and new faces, young people, 30-year-olds and those who are much older. What's your take on the composition of the House currently?
I think it's going to be quite a mix of a House with different kind of attributes that are going to be in place. For my Member of Parliament, Julius Sunkuli, who comes from Kilgoris constituency, he was last there 20 years ago. And 20 years ago, this was a Westminster style of parliament. Even in the sitting arrangement, it was the green benches where the opposition sits to the left of the speaker and the governing party sits to the right of the speaker. The microphones were dangling from the ceiling, and now the whole place is electronic and congressional style of sitting. So in physical terms, quite a lot has changed about this parliament. And some of the old MPs who are quite seasoned debaters in their time will find quite a bit of a difference when they walk in. And of course, they'll find a House, again, I still go to my pet subject of the state of parties, because they'll find a parliament that is not very coherent when it comes to party positions. When the last time Sunkuli was in Parliament, of course, KANU was strong and the ruling benches on the right of the Speaker. And on the left was a very, very strong and well-coordinated opposition revolving around three parties at the time: the Democratic Party of Mwai Kibaki, Ford Kenya of Michael Omalwa, and I think the third party was NDP of Raila Odinga. And here is now a party with coalitions, independence. So it'll be a very new and different place to navigate. It'll be very interesting to see how they do that.
This is my concern. You see, there is celebration all over. You know, we have new MPs, we have young, vibrant lawmakers, but the celebration is soon coming to an end. Yes, we have done stories about the young MPs, the young people who have come, the new faces. But remember, how Parliament operates is not a sequential house where, okay, Yvonne, Hef, LK, Shuri, there is a certain ranking. For example, Parliament sits only 3 times a week. Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday morning and afternoon, and Thursday afternoon.
Yeah.
So how many people can be able to speak on the floor of the House per week?
Do they still catch the speaker's eye?
No, nowadays it's electronic.
You catch the speaker's finger.
Even that electronic system, there are certain structures that must operate. For example, when the leader of majority or leader of minority, majority whip or minority whip, want to speak, even if you had queued before them, they will be given an opportunity to speak first. They are ranking members. For example, if Aden Duale, the member for Garissa Township, wants to speak, he will be given preference to Salasia, for example. And so quite a number of these young MPs will find it difficult to catch the speaker's attention because the ranking members will want to contribute in a certain way. And sometimes the speaker will also deliberately allow certain people to speak, especially when he wants them to inform a certain direction in the House based on experience, expertise, and so on and so forth. Let's say, for example, there's a bill touching on certain laws or certain parts of the Constitution. If, for example, Otiende Amolo
or Samuel
Chepkonga wants to speak, he will be given preference to another member of Parliament. And so there is a certain reality that will dawn that things don't work in a sequential manner. You will still have to, live within the boundaries of certain ranks in the House. It's more like a high school. I mean, Form 1 na Form 4 kuna tofauti kidogo. And so a good number of the MPs, especially the young ones, will have to find their footing very quickly. Find their footing on how to operate within a new environment. Quite a number of them may be brilliant in their own ways where they're coming from the private sector and so on and so forth. But here, you're coming to a different
house of tradition.
It has a certain tradition. And so most of them will be safer if they were to increase their output in the committees, because the bulk of the work in Parliament is done in committees. So this is a very good opportunity for them to improve the quality of legislations, particularly from the committee level. And at the same time, they must also not forget their constituencies, because unfortunately there's a tendency, if Nairobi gets the better of you, you may forget where you came from. And so that's why it becomes easy. Every so often when an election is conducted, you see the turnover is quite high because there were certain expectations, roads, water, and so on and so forth. But when you don't deliver them, remember your opponent immediately begins to campaign for that seat.
While you are working.
While you are working. So that's the challenge that they face in the House.
4 years before the election.
For 4 years before the election, that's right. I just want us to listen to, a number of senators who are speaking, and then, we'll come back and just wrap up that particular issue. And we'll talk about how they will vote, whether they'll do it to their conscience or on party lines. Let's listen.
And voted, but since nobody voted against you, therefore it's obvious that I voted for you. But that does not mean that I joined Kenya Kwanza. I am a member of the National Reconstruction Alliance, and I will guard my autonomy jealously. I will vote on issues and on conviction. I will not be whipped to vote on anything.
It's unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, that in this country we have people who have set a culture of never accepting any electoral process and the results. When they see that their numbers are not adding up, then they must find a way to murky and muddy the process. If it's not demanding for servers to be open, it's in walkouts in Parliament. That is a culture that we need to banish and be honorable people. Speak, make your vote. If you're defeated, accept with grace.
I would also wish to talk to my colleagues who just left this morning. It is not that they were elected by their people to walk out of the chambers of Parliament. They are supposed to be here to come and express themselves. Walking out is disdain to the people that elected them to come here. You're elected to come to the Senate, and then you leave the Senate. A big purpose of why you ran for office. You'd have rather asked the others to come and represent their counties.
Sitaongea mengi sana kwa leo kwa sababu hotuba tutafanya maalum, tutapewa nafasi, na kama venye Waswahili wanasema kuku mgeni akosi kamba mguuni, ningeomba nafasi nikae na suti yangu ya manjano, nitaongea siku hiyo ikifika. Asante.
Sisi sote tulioko hapa nataka kuwapatia kongole pia hawa ndugu zangu wapya ambao wameingia wakati huu ndani ya Senate. Ni safari ndefu, najua tutakuwa tukikwaruzana, lakini najua ya kwamba mnaelewa kwamba bunge hili la Senate ni bunge ambalo ni bipartisan. Hakuna mambo ukifika hapa unasema kwamba uko chama hichi, sote tuko pamoja.
Okay, so that is a snapshot of what took place at the Senate. I want us to move to the next conversation, but not without noting the very important role that Sarah Kyoko, who's the acting clerk of the National Assembly, played. She was the first female clerk to preside over a swearing-in, and like she said, and you spoke to her, a little earlier in the week, this point in time is the only time a clerk actually chairs a House sitting before, of course, they elect the Speaker, who then takes over. In fact, we saw that now with Moses Wetangula, who was now announcing Gladys Boss as the Deputy Speaker. But before that, she was conducting that, and indeed, quite competently, of course, handling the issue of Moses Wetangula's eligibility to vie. And she seemed to have a reasoned, is it judgment or ruling, on the matter, and, she'd cited other jurisdictions. I just thought that was, noteworthy. So, something good. But she's acting, and we wait to see if she'll be confirmed for the position.
What is also important to note is that, you see, when a new House is elected, there is no speaker because the position is vacant. So the person who presides over the swearing-in of MPs elect is the clerk. And of course, it is the clerk who also presides over the process of electing a speaker. That is the only time for the entire period of 5 years, the clerk gets to preside over a House sitting. The clerk basically is like the CEO of Parliament, if you may like. This is the person who understands the nitty-gritties of what's happening and requires a person who is very, very well experienced on matters Parliament, matters procedure, standing orders, and so on and so forth. And Sarah Kyoko has done this for 30 years plus. So you can tell she comes from a very good position. Jeremiah Nyegenya in the Senate also quite eloquent on those matters. That goes to tell you, Yvonne and Linus, the caliber of people that we have in Parliament, especially members of staff. Top quality. You remember Phyllis Macau? The lady who was in charge of the Parliamentary Budget Office? Top quality,
That PBO, by the way, has some serious...
And by the way, even for the new members of Parliament, they would be well in their place to make use of this parliamentary staff. Unfortunately, quite a number of them make assumptions. They don't really take advantage of the finesse and the eloquence and the expertise and the competence of the parliamentary staff. If you really want to understand how Parliament operates, you must go and get an opportunity to sit with those members of staff. They will teach you how things operate. They will tell you, they will help you to be a competent member of Parliament. And this is part of the parliamentary I would say heritage that needs to be harnessed, to be taken care of insofar as improving the discourse and quality of legislations is concerned. So I enjoyed speaking to Sarah this week, and you could tell even the level of preparedness. That question of Moses Wetangula, I posed it to her, and quite a number of people have asked about that question. And you would tell that she had prepared in advance because it was well clear that it will come up.
It had been raised as an issue there. So wish her all the best. I keep saying the staff at the Parliamentary Budget Office do some great work, great understanding of the budget process, the economy of the country. And so for anyone, who wants to be able to have some proper, arguments on the floor of the House, would do well to really harness.
But who listens to what they say? Because, for example, Yvonne, if you remember, and very briefly, even the whole question of the national debt burden, these were some of the issues that were raised by the Parliamentary Budget Office long ago, especially, in fact, actually during the first term of the Jubilee administration. Unfortunately, at that time, who was willing to listen? Some of the things that are being said today were said 5-6 years ago.
Quite some time back.
If only we were a country that listens to professionals.
Okay. Well, we were doing just that, listening to professionals. On Monday this week, we were at the Supreme Court. Let's listen to the President of the Supreme Court, Chief Justice Martha Koome, on that decision regarding the petitions that were before the Supreme Court. regarding the presidential election outcome.
Out that the transmission logs produced in the affidavit of Justice Nyangaya were of no probative value. The registrar's report shows that the original forms 34A from the contestant polling stations, which were allegedly intercepted, were exactly the same as those on the public portal, and the certified copies that were presented to this court. A review of some of the logs presented as evidence of staging showed that they were either from logs arising from the 2017 presidential election or were outright forgeries. In our considered view, there was no evidence of a man-in-the-middle server configured to the IEBC's VPN network, and no evidence was produced to show that the chairperson of IEBC and staff were part of the arranged conspiracy. The affidavits of Celestine Opio and Arnold Ochieng Oginga, while containing sensational information, were not credible, as the registrar's report confirmed that all the forms 34A attached to those affidavits and purportedly given to them by the agents at select polling stations were significantly different from the originals, certified copies, and those on the public portal.
Martha Koome, the Chief Justice there, when they were delivering their judgment at the Supreme Court on Monday. That was Monday, right?
Yes.
It feels like a lot has happened in a week, right? Okay. Linus, let's go to you. The decision, the judgment. Let's pick out. There was 8 issues up for determination. Of course, the 9th was the prayers of the petitioners. How did it go?
All the 9 issues, actually all the 8 issues rather, were dismissed. And I think to the surprise of the petitioners, if you watched their reaction right at the end, because they were not very satisfied with the handling of some of the issues, especially the very glaring issue of the divisions between the IEBC commissioners and the question of whether the IEBC carried out or conducted the election in line with Article 138(3)(c), whereby the commission does the tallying and before the chairman, in accordance with 138(10), announces the results. But here is the overall picture of this petition. This is the 3rd petition in the 3rd election since the promulgation of the new constitution, the Constitution of Kenya 2010. And there's something really impressive in terms of a culture that is taking hold now of, if you are not happy with the results, then you have to go to the Supreme Court and get your case heard and determined. And I think it was one of the foreign newspapers, was it the New York Times, that spoke about the voters making their decision, and then they'll have to sit at home and wait for the judges to then determine what they had said. And it played out in a very robust way, again, in typical Kenyan way. For the 3rd election, again, we've seen a track moving there with evidence or material. Of course, there's an element of dramatization by the parties of this whole thing. The more the merrier, you know, the pictures ought to be very, very interesting. But this petition, unlike the previous 2, also, actually, there's some similarity between this petition and that of 2013. In 2013, we didn't have an incumbent, just like now we don't have an incumbent. And so the court was deciding an issue on a more fairly even ground. The 2017 Supreme Court had a way more difficult job to do than the 2022 one. And then when you look at the issues, there were for me, two issues really stood out. There was the issue of technology, and there was the issue of process, as per, I think, was it prayer number 6 on the conduct of the election by the IEBC. The case stood or fell on those two issues. And when I saw the judges dismantling issue number 1, I immediately knew that the whole petitioner's case has collapsed. Because remember, number 1 was going to determine the issue of Form 34As, that was going to determine the issue of disparities, was going to actually relate to the issue of 50+1. They're interconnected, and I think for the petitioners, the case was lost the moment issue number 1 was lost. And when you look at number 6, that's the issue of divisions within the IEBC, there's one thing that the parties must have realized just from the way the judges executed that matter. The judges executed this matter by bringing forth their awareness. So we saw that on television. We saw you announcing the results. When did you notice that the process within the IEBC was not working? When did the dysfunction start playing out? So I think it was very, very interesting to also see the judges taking a very inquisitorial approach to this matter. They asked a lot of questions, and in fact, in my view, it became the draw of the petition. People are waiting for, forget about what is happening in the day. What will the judges ask? And it is what the judges asked that determined the mood of the parties, both the petitioners and the respondents, and how their day ended. I remember when they asked the questions on Wednesday, when they had the petitioners, the respondents were very happy because they thought the questions were very tough. Because the questions from the judges tended to poke holes on the cases of the people that took to the floor. So on Wednesday, it was the petitioners, and on Thursday, it was the respondents. Again, on Thursday night, when the judges started asking the questions, again, the petitioners now had a good evening, and they thought, oh, this could actually go our way. So very, very interesting, and very interesting to see the Supreme Court doing it differently by basically being a more inquisitorial court, where the judges ask those questions and where the judges actually bring forth their knowledge of the issue instead of sitting, listening, and determining the matter in later. They were engaging, they stepped forward, they came and offered their views and even questions. Of course, I found it funny when they asked the petitioners what they would like, basically. It's a bit of, especially on the issue of whether the chairperson of IEBC should still remain in office.
Instead of another election.
Then what happens in the event of a repeat election?
Of a repeat. And they say, okay, what would you like us to do it? That was very, very interesting. It sounded like a trap question.
What stood out for you, Francis?
What stood out for me is two things, especially on the day of the delivery of the judgment. You could tell from, just like for the Maraga case in 2017, the opening statement of the Chief Justice, I think, was the clincher, and you could easily tell where the judgment was headed. And for me, right from the day they had the status conference, where they distilled the issues, which were about 26 or thereabout, to only 9, 8+1 for release and orders, the number one issue on technology was the clincher. This is where the case would win or be lost. And the moment the Chief Justice started enumerating issues related to that technology question, it was obvious that the case was lost. But I think it was also interesting for me when on the day Deputy Chief Justice Philomena Mwilu gave information that we saw some of you trying to call us.
Right.
And to me, that was the high pressure that this case was all about. I'm sure there are people who are still busy trying to make calls and see whether it is possible to move a number here or a number there. Because even at the Supreme Court, it was a game of numbers. But now what I found also interesting is that this was a unanimous decision. It goes to tell you the kind of caucusing that the judges had to do, so that I'm sure all of them had their own views and issues of, and perceptions of what was raised. But the level of caucusing and arriving at that unanimous decision must have been quite high level. But at the same time, there were some critical questions that were answered, in my opinion, which will go a long way in improving the conduct of the next election. Like, for example, the question of how a commission works. Who is the commission? Who does the verification and validation of results? You see, there was that question of Chebukati Wafula, the chairman of IEBC, being accused by the other 4 commissioners of being a lone ranger. The judges were able to clearly state that this is a commission function, not a chairman's function. So the next election, this matter becomes very clear for the next commission on how the verification should be done. And then the question of transmission of results, once again very clear. And finally, the question of rejected ballots. It came again the 3rd time, and the judges clearly stated that the rejected ballots do not count. And lastly, the question of turnout. Is it, which votes are valid? Because I saw discussions about the voter register, the questions about the people who turned up. So quite a number of issues came up, in my opinion, and I think we now have a better conclusion and a guidance in terms of conducting the next election.
Okay, finally.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the point Francis raised about the unanimous decision. To me, I saw this court as going the route of 2013, the Willy Mutunga court, in taking one position, a unanimous position on the matter that was before them. In fact, my prediction was, had they to annul the election, they would have still done it as a unanimous decision. Because there's something safe about unanimous, because first of all, it doesn't lead to the kind of profiling that we saw in 2017, where the 4 judges that voted to annul the election were really picked on, castigated, called Wakora and things like that. Now, in this election, if you want to call them Wakora, there'll be 7 of them. You have to really call the entire bunch names. If you want to praise them, then you'll have to praise all of them. I thought there was an element of playing safe, but also the weight of evidence that was presented by the petitioners fell short of dividing that bench. You see, when there is clear evidence, you will have seen then that also reverberating in court. And I think it was very clear from the beginning, and I'd go back to the statement by the opening by James Orengo, senior counsel. And I found it an opening that took too much time to illustrate what the issue is. I think the shock effect works. Compared to what happened in 2017, for example, when the petitioners proved and submitted their evidence within the first few minutes of talking to these judges, whereas this time, it went on for so long without anything tangible or something shocking coming to place. Remember, it was only on Friday, and that is during the rejoinder, that counsel Julie Soweto then did what the entire media called the bombshell. We are live in the public portal. Just look at this school, primary school. Jose Camargo. Did I say Kamau?
You wanted to say Camargo.
It was deliberate. And because it was spotted somewhere in Moranga. And the shock was there, but it was coming in a bit late in the day. I remember it actually took aback the respondents, they were protesting that, okay, are you submitting new evidence?
Yeah.
They wanted the protection of the judges that, look, this is not going the right way. So in entirety, one thing that failed to come out clear this time in the Supreme Court is the extent of irregularities. In the last election, that is 2017, the last petition, it was demonstrated almost beyond doubt that the election was carried out not in accordance with the Constitution. So I think it ended safely for the Supreme Court. I think they sit prettier than the 2017 court. Nobody is being harassed. I have no drivers are being shot and things like that. Although that also has a great element of the kind of transition we're having, where this time you really don't have an incumbent, and so the field is supposed to be level, in my view.
Yeah.
Whatever the case, Yvonne, it goes to show the importance of having institutions that can be respected. So if today judges are good and you praise them, and tomorrow they make a decision that you don't like and you call them crooks, just know that there is a possibility that you may meet them again, hoping that they will make a decision that favors you. So at the end of the day, bottom line, decisions, or whether we agree or we don't agree with whatever they say, it is important to respect the judges and respect the institutions, because they are the most important line of our defense on all these matters.
Yeah.
And technology. I think that's a substantial issue that came during the election, and the very fine question of audit of the ballot papers, the few boxes that were brought, and the whole question of technology. Unlike in 2017, when we were told stories of guys sleeping in France, I think the reports that were tabled were also a key pointer as to the decision that the judges were going to make.
Absolutely. It is time to wrap it up. I'll just give one line. IBC, where do they go from here? That's going to be something interesting to watch after everything we've seen.
In the detailed...
Yeah, but also just politically going forward.
Yeah.
First they're on the other end, then now they're pledging allegiance. That's something that's going to be an outcome. I think it'll be outside the judicial process, but that's a story for another day. Let's wrap it up here. As
I wanted to give you random thoughts, but I will not.
Save them. Please keep them for next week. I want to hear them, and I'm sure we all do. Let's end it here. And tonight, our final word is a joint one. So, yeah, let's get into that. We end our show tonight by rolling our final words into one. The take, punchline, and kicker bow in honor of the ultimate decision maker of the momentous events of the last few days, particularly August 9th general election. We honor most earnestly the voters of Kenya.
Indeed, 14 million out of 22 million registered voters heeded the call, got out, and trooped to polling stations across the country, 46,229 of them, to decide who would be their president, governor, senator, county woman member of the National Assembly, members of the National Assembly, and members of the county assemblies. And because we are a representative democracy, it is these 14 million voters who, with their vote, gave a 5-year mandate to the men and women who will govern our country, manage our resources, make laws, and introduce policies that will hopefully improve the lives of 50 million plus Kenyans.
The voter turnout at 65% was comparatively lower to the 2017 turnout. Actually, the lowest since the return to multipartyism in 1992. However, it takes nothing from those who were elected on the 9th of August 2022, because it is the voter who turned up that makes decisions, even on behalf of those who did not. The exercise on the 9th of August, yet again, confirms that the voter knows what he or she wants and who their choices are. And that is why they turned up voted, and went back to their normal business, hoping that their vote would count.
We also hail the law enforcement agencies who exercised discipline and relative political impartiality compared to the 2013 and 2017 general elections. Unlike the last 3 elections, the police have emerged clean of any cases of excessive and altogether mindless use of force. This time, no lives were lost to trigger-happy, politically charged security operatives. No Kenyan was killed because of elections or indeed results. It ended well, and we don't take that for granted.
As we commend the security forces for keeping peace and for being peaceful, we condemn the isolated, ugly incidents of poll-related violence. The shootout in Eldas constituency that forced a postponement of the election there led to the injury of a returning officer who has since lost a limb because of an election-related assignment. Then there was the brutal murder of the returning officer of Embakasi East constituency, Daniel Mbolu Musyoka, who was abducted and found dead days later as Kenyans went to the polls. These killing bore similarities with that of Chris Msando 5 years ago, and both remain unresolved.
In respect of the late Musyoka and the late Msando, we have one humble appeal to the security and investigative agencies. Please do not normalize murder of election officials or indeed murder of any other innocent Kenyan. Tell us who killed Mbobu Musyoka and who killed Chris Msando. And more importantly, tell us why. As we demand answers from the police on the killing of the election officials, we have a few more things that went right about this election cycle. The proceedings at the Supreme Court caught the favorable attention of civility-oriented Kenyans and indeed many people around the world.
We are talking about the presidential election petition, and what a huge reality television that was. From lorry loads of evidence to that black and white sea of legal minds and bodies, the spectacle was a global proportions binge-worthy broadcast. And from petitioners to respondents, a uniquely Kenyan election ritual took shape, complete with an atmosphere of arresting anticipation. We are proud of the Supreme show, both its style and its substance.
For a country not known for very polite manners, the election petition in the Supreme Court was a supreme branding moment. Don't be cheated. Milimani Law Courts showcased our hidden capacity for decorum and civility. Lawyers representing petitioners and respondents executed their briefs without executing each other, as would be the Kenyan norm. Brain and brawn was the currency of trade, and whichever end of the room your sympathies lay, you would be proud to be associated with a process that resolves by reason a dispute that would elsewhere be resolved by the barrel of the gun.
We cannot forget to pay tribute to the general public because it is their reaction to the Supreme Court proceedings that completed this civility story. No bonfires, no clashes, and no demonstrations, except for peaceful processions by those favored by the outcome of the Supreme Court proceedings. Kenyans reacted calmly and peacefully, and more importantly, with the acceptance of the court verdict. To that point, we have reason to celebrate the maturity of our democracy and reason to believe we once again set a good example worthy of emulation.
Now, let us look at the journey ahead. The election is decisively over, and a new government will shortly be installed. Mature democracies are not just about elections, but also the life after. And the life after began today with the inauguration of the Houses of Parliament. And on Tuesday next week, a new president, the 5th since independence, will be inaugurated when William Samoei Ruto takes the oath of office. Now, here is the aggregate of the events of the last few weeks and indeed democratic maturity. Whichever way you voted on the 9th of August, a democracy can only have one president and one government at a time.
And indeed, that is reality, two-way street that the voters and the elected leaders must be awake to. Beginning next week, a new administration will be in office to pursue our collective dreams and aspirations as a country. The new government will from the first day be tested for promises that range from growing the economy, creating opportunities for the unemployed, especially the youth, improving health services, reducing the cost of living, rule of law and constitutionalism, respect for institutions, among other promises.
Indeed, and considering the general circumstances of our nation, the new administration will have no time for honeymoon or even the usual Kenyan thing of so-called homecoming parties. With the cost of living visiting untold suffering upon countless Kenyan households, the new government must hit the road running.
And goodwill Kenyans possess and always offer in plenty. We follow suit here tonight on the News Gang. Best wishes we convey to Kenyans and their next government. That is our take, punchline, kicker, and in absentia, the memo.